Why do Mexicans throw toilet paper in the trash? That sounds like a setup for a bad joke. But one of the first things that I noticed after moving to Mexico was that a lot of bathrooms had a trash can sitting right next to the toilet. Not because there was trash in it, but because there was toilet paper in it. And if you're American, that's one of those moments where your brain pauses for a second. Wait, what? Because where I grew up, toilet paper has one destination, the toilet. That's the system. Nobody talks about it. Nobody's debating this. Nobody questions it. You use it, flush it, and move on with your day. Then I moved to Mexico and I started seeing signs asking people not to flush the toilet paper. And the first explanation everybody gives you is pretty simple. The pipes are old. Okay, that sounds reasonable. Mystery solved. The video's over. Except the more that I looked into this, the less that explanation actually made sense, because some Mexican people told me never to flush the toilet paper, but other Mexican people told me it was okay to flush it every day. Same building, same signs. Others didn't. Some hotels didn't care at all. Now I have a bigger question. If this is really just about old pipes, why isn't everyone following the same rules? Maybe the answer wasn't as simple as people claimed. Maybe there was something else going on. And before I keep going, I'm curious about something. If you've been to Mexico before, what was the first thing that you saw that made you think, wait, why do they do it like that? Maybe it was just the toilet paper, or maybe it was the water tanks on the roof, maybe it was the concrete houses. Whatever it was, let me know in the comments, because I have a feeling that we're all collecting the same list of questions. The first thing that I discovered is that Mexico doesn't have just one plumbing system. It has thousands of systems. Different cities, different states, different building ages. There is different construction standards in each one of these areas, and there's different sewer systems. Not to mention different infrastructure, different solutions to the same problem. And suddenly that simple explanation started falling apart, because many newer buildings in Mexico can handle toilet paper perfectly fine. Many modern apartments can as well. Many hotels can. Many office buildings can. Many shopping centers can, which immediately creates a problem for the old pipes theory. Because if newer buildings can handle it, then why are people still throwing toilet paper in the trash? That should have been the end of this story, but instead it just created a whole new mystery, so I just kept digging. And that's when I learned about something that most Americans would never think about: risk. Think about it this way. Let's say flushing toilet paper works 99% of the times. Nobody notices. Everything is fine, and life goes on. But the 100th time, now you've got a clogged drain, a backed up toilet, a plumber, a repair bill, and a very bad afternoon. And suddenly the trash can is sitting next to the toilet, and it doesn't look so strange anymore. It starts looking like insurance, because in many places, throwing the toilet paper away isn't necessarily about what the system can handle. It's more about what people don't want to gamble on. And at first, that's something that really surprised me. A lot of those signs are not saying the toilet physically cannot handle toilet paper. The sign is basically saying, please don't be the person who finds out whether this toilet can handle toilet paper or not. That's basically a completely different idea. And the deeper that I looked into it, I found more stories from homeowners, landowners, plumbers, and people that are maintaining septic systems saying basically the same thing. Why take the chance? If throwing the paper away prevents a problem, then that's what people are going to do. And suddenly something seemed irrational at first, but then it started sounding very practical. And then I stumbled upon another rabbit hole, because Americans tend to talk about this like it's uniquely a Mexican thing, and it's not. Variations of this exist all over the whole world, in parts of Latin America, parts of Europe, parts of Asia. Different countries developed the same infrastructure. Different habits evolved around that infrastructure, and different solutions became normal. And that's when I realized something very important. The weird thing wasn't the trash can. The weird thing was how convinced I was that my way was the universal way. Because nobody is ever telling Americans that the toilet paper belongs anywhere but the toilet. We just kind of grow up with it. It's just one of those invisible assumptions that becomes so normal, you just stop seeing it until you leave the country. And then suddenly something as simple as the bathroom becomes a lesson on how different societies can solve these problems. And now I want to test this theory. If you're American, were you already aware of this before visiting Mexico, or did it completely surprise you? And if you're Mexican, what's an everyday thing that Americans always seem confused by when they first arrived in Mexico? I'm genuinely curious because I keep finding new examples. And the funny thing is that I started doing this investigation expecting to learn about toilets. But instead I ended up learning about assumptions. Because the longer that I live in Mexico, the more I keep running into the same pattern. I see something. I assume that I understand it, and then I start researching. And then I realize that the real answer is more complicated than I could have ever thought. The roof water tanks, the concrete houses, the pharmacies, the eggs sitting on the shelves, the speed bumps. Over and over again, Mexico keeps forcing me to question things that I didn't even realize I was assuming. And honestly, that's one of my favorite parts about living here. Not because Mexico is strange, but because it reminds me that what feels normal is usually just what we are familiar with. The things that seem strange from the outside usually evolved for a reason. And once you understand the reason, they stop looking so strange at all. So can you flush toilet paper in Mexico? Sometimes, yes. Sometimes, no. And sometimes you absolutely should. Sometimes you absolutely shouldn't. The answer depends on the building, the plumbing, the sewer system, and the people responsible for maintaining it, which is probably the least satisfying answer possible. But it is also the truth, and I've found that the truth is usually more interesting than the stereotype. I started this video thinking that Mexico had a toilet paper problem, but what I found was something completely different. Mexico doesn't have a toilet paper problem. It has thousands of different solutions built under thousands of different circumstances, and people have adapted to those realities over time. And maybe that's the bigger lesson. The next time you see something in another country that makes no sense, don't immediately ask, why do they do that? Ask yourself, what do they know that I don't? Americans, what's the biggest thing that you've seen in another country that completely changed one of your assumptions? And Mexicans, where you live, do people still throw toilet paper in the trash, or is flushing more of a common thing now? Let me know below in the comments. And if you've enjoyed going down this rabbit hole with me, subscribe. Because every week I find something, another thing in Mexico that makes absolutely no sense at all at first. And then it turns out to have a surprisingly good explanation. And we're building quite a collection at this point. I'm just a guy living in Mexico trying to figure all this out at the same time you are. Take it easy. Have a good day.